Good morning, TDC. Hello. Good to see you all. Hi, I'm Callum, and we're going to talk a little bit about leading successful remote teams, specifically remote teams. And before we start, I'm going to make you all do a little exercise. I'm sorry. I'd like you all to close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like you to imagine the perfect start to your working day. It could be that you wake up with sunrise, watching that over your city with a coffee. You take a stroll through the park with your kid on the way to school. You grab another coffee on your way back to your desk. And let's get back to reality. The chances are you're rudely awakened by an alarm clock going off. You're already late to work. You grab your kid, you get in the car, you sit in traffic, rushing to make it in time for school drop-off and then to get into your office in a time for your 9 a.m. morning stand-up, where you stand with your team to say, "No updates from me." You then return to your open-plan desk in your noisy office to get not much work done. You have back-to-back meetings, including with your line manager, hearing them say how important it is to get back into the office. Return to office is so important for the company culture. This is the best picture of company culture I could find on the internet, a water cooler. Who has a water cooler in their home? Nobody. But apparently this is what we should be going into the office for. So, unfortunately, this is what most people's start to their regular working day looks like. And today we're going to talk about maybe what a different world could look like in a remote team, leading a successful team. So, hello. I'm Callum. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a Braco MVP, and Braco's an open source .NET-based CMS out of Denmark. It's very good if you need something in that niche. I'm a .NET developer by trade, but in the last decade, I've sort of fallen into running my own company a little bit by accident. It's hard to say no to money. Called Bump, we're a consultancy, hence I'm the chief bumpster. I came up with my own title because I could, and it stopped recruiters finding me on LinkedIn. I'm still on various social channels at that handle there. I'd love to connect with you all. I'm actually now based in Sydney, Australia, and I am fully aware of the irony of me traveling 10,000 miles to come and speak to you all about remote teams. But I'm originally from the UK. Okay, let's dive in. So I've been working with remote teams in a remote setting for a bit over a decade, since about 2012, 2013. The company I was working in at the time, one of our team decided they wanted to work remote. They were going to move away and they were going to work remote. They were our lead developer. And this was our sort of first foray into remote working. Before remote working was cool, before you had Slack even, we were using GChat and a couple of other collaboration tools. It wasn't very good at the time. That was my first foray. And then I joined another company in about 2013-14 that was a company that was a remote company. They had two offices. They had an office in Poland and they had an office in London. And I was really excited to join this company because they had a culture that was renowned in the industry, renowned in their sector as being like a innovative, industry-leading, very collaborative, and the kinds of people you saw in this company were really well respected individually in their own right. So I got to work. I was leading consultancy on various .NET projects, implementations for like railway companies, doing membership systems. We worked on a medical startup. It was quite fun. I was really enjoying it. And the company culture was buzzing. I felt like I was learning something every day, and I was really getting along with my team. Unfortunately, this didn't last all that long. So I spent 5 years at this company, and in that time, we went from having these two offices in London and in Poland to then people working remotely from home. And we ended up with this issue where we had a big cultural clash, where in London, we'd rock up late at 10 a.m., and we'd have our daily stand-up at that time. But we have a development team in Poland who would rock up at 7 a.m. their time, which was 6 a.m. in the UK. And it meant that for half of the working day, the team in Poland were sat on their own with nobody to talk to in London. And the same, they would finish at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the UK. And we would wrap up at maybe 6 o'clock. It ended up being two completely disparate, separate, remote teams that kind of had nothing to do with each other. And when it came to us then deciding approach for like building software, we were also not aligned. It made it very difficult to sort of agree on an approach, not least because of the country divide. We had people in Poland who had much more experience building, say, financial platforms, and everything they wanted to build was super robust. And we were working on more like experimental stuff, and it was just sort of a see what works and try and get something out there quickly. And those two cultures just didn't work. Really, to get a decision, you had to get everybody in a room together. And it meant that because of this, like people, not being able to talk, decisions took a long time too. Our stand-ups, our daily stand-up that would happen at 10 a.m. because the company was based out of London, would just drag on for like an hour. We were wasting so much time in our week on just managing communication between these two teams. So my very clever lead developer came up with a great idea. We need to get all these separate offices connected. What are we going to do? We're going to install IP cameras. So there was a screen in every office with a feed of the other office, so you could see your colleagues, and it felt like we were closer. It sounds great, right? No. We ended up just looking at an empty office for half the day because the team in Poland decided to finish at 2 p.m. And likewise, they would see our empty office for a few hours a day as well. They'd go for lunch just after we had our stand-up, so there was not really any opportunity for collaboration. This was a really bad example of trying to bring the teams together. The issue wasn't the distance, it wasn't even the fact we couldn't see each other. It was a cultural issue. And this all started to grate on me. As someone working in this team, I wanted to build great software. That's why I joined this company, and I wanted to work with great people. And eventually, it just felt like I was on a hamster wheel. I was constantly running, and things were moving faster without really going anywhere. And so I burned out, as probably any normal person would. When I joined this company, I was a really keen open source contributor. I was working on all kinds of projects in my spare time, and as I saw my time at that company go on towards the end, I was like, I just have no motivation at all. I put on weight, I stopped seeing my family, I kind of became a bit of a shell. And the real turning point for me was when I went to a family event, and my mum turned to me and said, "You look unwell, grey, almost dead." And this made me realize I need to do something. That actually, this company and the culture that I was working in was really taking all of my passion out of me. So, I quit. I did a fairly fortunate thing that I was able to do is just like, I'm going to take a few months off, really work out what I want to do. And it was miraculous because the day that I quit, I sat there, first day, having nothing to do, and realized, you know what? I want to contribute to some open source software for the first time in 2 years. That burden of leaving this company took a huge weight off my shoulders. So I spent the next 3 months exploring with some different companies what my future might look like. And that led to people saying, hey, come on board, like, come and help us with some projects that we're doing. And I sort of became a consultant, a freelancer, and that was cool. But as I said at the start, money's really hard to say no to, and I ended up working for myself, like burning myself out again. I was like, okay, fine. So I need to hire some people. But I don't want to work for a company again. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to do it properly. And I said, if we're going to build a company, I'm going to build it in my own vision. Based on all the learnings I've had, I'm going to take all of these things and make a company that's purely after my own values, somewhere I can enjoy working. So I took the very fortunate position of starting a company, and I was able from day one to define exactly what our culture and our process was going to look like. And I set 4 key pillars that I believe are critical to where we are today, a decade later. This is a quote from Peter Drucker. He's a management consultant, so I wouldn't necessarily trust anything he says. But I do believe in this statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You've probably heard this yourselves before. I believe that culture was going to be our number one driver behind the company. We need a good culture to deliver successful work and to be happy in our work. I didn't build this company to be a millionaire, a billionaire. I just wanted to do good work. So I set 4 pillars, as I said. And our first company value was community and open source is our number one priority as a company. And that's super backwards, right? Because you don't really pay your bills through doing community and open source. But I saw this a bit differently. By me and my team being able to get out there, put their names out there, do exactly what this previous company I'd worked for had done, make names of the individuals, that becomes our marketing strategy. And this becomes a really good driver for our business. So we decided to make community and open source our number one driver. We're going to make sure that everything we do, if possible, we're going to try and open source it. We're going to contribute, we're going to blog, and that's doable on company time. There's no like, oh, I'm having to do all these things in my spare time. This is part of people's roles. So, as I say here, I believe it empowers contribution, helps with individual personal branding, and establishing our reputation. The second pillar that I said was an immense focus on technical quality. Now, I'm sure everybody in this room works for a software company, and they're thinking, we do that too. We care about quality. But we all know, we've all been in those scenarios where a deadline's coming and quality starts to slip so you can hit those deadlines. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but because from the very top of this company, I'm able to say quality is like our really, really important thing. I want to be proud of the work we do. We have a culture of flagging when something's not going to be ready in time. We make a plan. If we need more time, we get more time. Like, that sounds like such a novel concept, but it does work. If you've got full buy-in from all of your different stakeholders, you can push back on things and say, this deadline's not going to happen because we want to deliver the best quality possible. And then sometimes you piss off some clients, but you become known for delivering this really high bar of quality. And we all hold internally each other to account on that same bar as well. My third pillar was we were going to be a remote company, and we were going to be truly flexible, truly, truly flexible. What do I mean by this? Well, I like to travel, and I like to go to events, and I now live in Australia. So we needed a culture that was going to work fully remotely. We don't have an office. We've never had an office. We don't have a central point where the team meet. Instead, we pour all of that budget into getting the people in the team together in person, and we do something that's not work. We talk about life and do a fun activity. So the time we spend together is high quality, and then we focus on, when we're working remote, doing the best work we can. Flexibility is a really interesting one, because every company I see advertising a role now says, we're a flexible company. We're a hybrid company, in the office 3 days a week. It's like, that's not so flexible. But I went a bit further than this. I was like, so a 9 a.m. stand-up is not flexible because you have a time you need to be there every day. Yes, you maybe can be flexible around that, but that's not conducive with true flexibility. So we got rid of the stand-up. And I did a few other slightly controversial things. So we have this work from anywhere policy where you can literally work from wherever you feel comfortable. We support our teams in doing that, so we give them a budget to set up where they want, be that a co-working space, be that a home office, get the right desk. Effectively, we believe that people work best where they are most comfortable. And if that is on a beach somewhere, as long as you get your work done, I don't care. We also have an unlimited leave policy. This one's a bit controversial. A lot of the Silicon Valley type startups do this as well. The idea being people can take as much leave as they want. My view on this at the time was, well, if you're not motivated to be in work today, I don't want you around. Like, take some time off, make sure you're focused and motivated, come back, and then we can do some great work. I think across the board with all of this, it's treat people like adults, and hopefully they treat you with the same level of respect back. We don't want to see people taking the piss, but at the same time, if you get a bunch of passionate, like-minded people together, this isn't a huge problem. And then final pillar was minimal ceremony. I wanted to get rid of as much ceremony in my team as possible. I mentioned that other company where we were spending an hour on a stand-up every day. That is a badly ran stand-up. And if you looked across our sprints, we were running a 2-week sprint where we would have an hour of stand-ups every day, and then we'd have various other meetings. We would have a sprint planning and a kickoff meeting, and we'd have a retrospective at the end of the sprint as well. And we'd end up burning 2 days out of our whole sprint on just meetings and not getting anything done, nothing that was actually delivering any value to our customers or really enriching any of the team. So I got rid of stand-ups. I got rid of timesheets. I got rid of meetings, hierarchy, and overtime. Now this is, I will admit, controversial. But I'm going to explain each one. I've explained stand-ups already. Stand-ups can be replaced by a simple asynchronous update. If we're building a truly flexible team that can work anywhere in the world on any time zone, there needs to be some compromise at times where you do need to align, but providing an asynchronous update at the end of your day in Slack to say, hey, here's what I got to today, here's what I'm going to do tomorrow, here's any issues I have, could someone pair with me on this tomorrow, is a perfectly fine substitute for a stand-up. Meetings, we try to avoid having meetings as much as possible, and where we do, we use the technique of like a 30-minute meeting is actually 25 minutes, give people a 5-minute gap at the end. I saw a graph once that shows like you disrupt a developer who's working on a problem for that 10-minute meeting, and their productivity plummets to the floor, and then it takes like an hour or more for their productivity to ramp back up again. And if you've got constant meetings throughout the day, your productivity is no more than like 20% at any given time. So we try to focus our meetings on being early in the day or at a suitable time for everybody, and as minimal as possible. Timesheets. Now, I've delivered this talk a couple of times, and I know in Norway you've got some very strict rules about reporting your time and logging your time. So I'm not saying don't meet your legal obligations for making sure that your workers are not working more than they should. What I mean by this is the timesheet where the exact time that you report is what gets billed to the customer. Because it's bullshit. It doesn't. That's what salespeople are for. They agree a fixed cost for something or a contractual cost for people's time. And so we replaced this system rather than having to track granular amounts of time, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, which is usually inaccurate because people go, oh, I forgot what I did, or I didn't start a timer, I'm just going to guess. We do a system instead where we report at the end of the day, did I spend half a day or a day on this? And we've aligned all of our billing to that as well. So customers get billed for half a day of work or a day of work. What that means is if you've done 1 hour's work and that's all that customer wants, they pay half a day. They're kind of going to pay a tax for being inefficient. And we encourage customers then to bundle bits of work together to make sure that they're getting as maximum value as possible out of that half day. Equally, if you go a bit over half a day, we consider it a day. Bonus if you manage to do like a day and a half's worth of work in a day. But it all balances out over time because there'll be some days where you get nothing done. This system also factors in time for pair programming, code reviews, and other things that are sometimes quite hard to quantify. Hierarchy, we have a fairly flat structure. We're a small enough company that makes sense, but I believe that a flat hierarchy also can work in a small software team as well if you're in a larger company. And then finally, overtime. How many people in here have had forced overtime or on-call, or hey, we've got this project coming up and the deadline's coming, so who fancies doing a pizza party hackathon night where we can like all push to get this done? I'm proud that in the decade that we've been running this company, we've never done a fucking pizza night, because we don't need to. We plan for it. We make sure that people aren't going to have to work late. If the deadline's not going to be met, we communicate it. We plan around that and try and make sure that, we're going to deliver our best quality as quickly as possible. Fundamentally, for all 4 of these pillars to work, it comes down to great, and I mean exceptional communication. The results after a decade of doing this. So about 80% of our sales comes from reputation. That's that community and open source marketing really, really in practice. So I encourage my team to get out there to make a name for themselves in the space, not to tell anyone who they work for, but people want to work with the individuals. So they call us and say, I saw your colleague at this event. We'd love to chat about this project. That's a huge driver for us. We see a big return. Our average tenure in the company is now approximately 4 years, just over 4 years. And in an industry where people are fairly happy jumping jobs every 18 months to 2 years, that's a really good number. And we've got a team that feel happy and they feel rewarded. Not to blow my own trumpet a little bit, but we had a team social recently, and someone asked, what's the best company you've ever worked for? And I sat there awkwardly in the end of the table, like going, don't say another company, please. But people were quite open and honest, and they said, the reason we like working here is the flexibility. It gives us that ability to do the great work that we want on kind of our own terms and still feel happy, not burnt out. But we've learned some lessons as well, let's be honest. So we set out to do heavily technical, high-quality work. And one of my team turned to me and said, hey, I'm finding this quite draining. And I'm not wired that way. I love solving big, technical, complex problems all the time. And I wasn't feeling that, but it's a very fair point that you do need some variety in your work. People need to feel like they're achieving something, but also sometimes just need to coast and chill for a bit. Knowledge and working in silos is really difficult if you've got a remote team, so knowledge sharing. How do you identify when one person is the hub of knowledge on a project? How do you get that knowledge out of them and spread that across the team? Identifying those quickly is quite difficult when you're in a remote team because someone will just take on a task without really thinking because they feel they are best placed to do it. And so, yeah, we have to really actively try and make sure, hey, this person regularly works on this. Let's block them from working on this for a little while and just see if we can get some other people up to speed. I banned ceremony, and unfortunately, some ceremony is important. We've had to introduce one regular meeting each week. It's one meeting, and it does slightly go against my flexible philosophy. But we have a 9:30 Monday meeting where there's no excuses, except for today where I'm up on this stage, where you have to be there and you have to talk. And we spend 15 minutes just talking about crap. What did you do at the weekend? What's going on in your life? But the other 15 minutes is purely about setting the direction for the company for that week, making sure we're all aligned on priorities and focuses. We give an update from every department, very quick one, what's going on in dev, what's going on in sales, what are our community things we should be really getting involved in this week. And that's been a game changer because people actually feel like they are clear on where our direction is. Before, it wasn't so clear. Flexibility being a two-way street is a recent lesson for me. Because people can work anytime they want, in theory, it's been up to individuals to decide when and where they can fit certain tasks in. But when you have, let's say, a launch for a project and it's really key that something happens at a certain time, you need some good collaboration between your team to make sure the people who need to be on hand to make that launch happen are going to be around at that time. And there was some discussions in a team recently saying, yep, we can launch on this day at this time. And I guess it didn't get noted down somewhere. And then someone went, I've got a dentist appointment at that time, 2 hours before the launch. So the feedback there was, it should have been in the calendar. Perfectly fair, I take that. Equally, maybe a dentist appointment should have been in the calendar as well. People get used to you working at a certain time, like typically people are saying, I work from 10 till 6, that's okay. And if you're going to change from that regular pattern, just let people know. It comes back to this communication thing. Good communication is necessary. Unlimited leave is a complete myth. This is true. The first year we implemented this, people took less holiday than they ever had, and it's really important to establish some guidelines around this. We still have our unlimited leave policy, but we've structured it a little bit differently. So we give people a minimum amount of leave they need to take. That is the legal minimum. It's about 20 days, and we give them public holidays as well, and we close for Christmas. So people, without taking any time off, will automatically get like a month and a bit off each year. So we have a minimum, and then we give people a recommended amount of leave, which is a 75% bonus on top of that. So if it's 20 days, you are recommended to take 35 days, about 7 weeks of holiday plus Christmas. And then after that, because people felt like they didn't know if they were going to be pushing too much, asking for too much by taking leave, all it requires is a conversation. That's it. It won't be unreasonably denied, but your manager should have a conversation with you to say, you've reached the recommended limit, like, it's fine, you can keep going. And this gives people assurance that actually it's okay to do it. It also helps weed out any potential issues where someone might be taking more leave or taking leave at a time that really puts the team into trouble. Finally, open source. It is our number one value in the company, but it's really hard to do properly if you don't prioritize it. And for us, we've changed recently and started treating this like any other work stream. So we treat it like a client. We have a backlog of tasks through various open source projects, and that includes company ones and people's personal open source. So we collectively work to make sure that everybody's open source is moving forward. And we schedule that, so at any given time, there is one person working constantly on open source. We schedule it like any other project, and it's worked great. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the tools we use, because I don't think we're doing anything too fancy, but we're trying to do some special things within those tools. So we use Google Workspace for everything. We use GitHub for our code. We use, or used to use, Trello for our project management tool, and we use Slack. We've really tried to keep this simple, no Jira, no big, powerful suites. Instead, we just try to find what we believe to be the best tool for the job and use that. In Slack, we have quite a unique, I believe, setup. So this is my Slack channel, and you'll see right at the top there we have a list of common public channels, like an announcements channel, which is where we celebrate things that are happening in the team, a new project going live, someone doing some great work today, a new person starting. We have our announcements channel. Community channel is for talking about open source and things that we should be doing in the community. Devs channel is our devs team channel. We have an emergencies channel where if a system goes offline or a third party we rely on goes offline, it posts into there and all the alarm bells ring. General is just for chat. We have a leads channel for our team leads. Open source is, again, about open source. Random is like memes and GIFs and nonsense. Sales, uptime monitoring, etc. But where it gets more interesting is where we've then got this naming convention for our channels. So internal dash something is for an internal project, not something with a customer. Project dash something is a project channel specifically for that project where people can talk about that project, and we encourage communication to be kept in the individual channels. And then we'll also have a client dash channel as well, where if we have a client who's in our Slack workspace, they engage there too. Within each of these channels, we use the bookmarks feature at the top of Slack to actually link people off to the various different places they need to go and find information. So here's the GitHub repo, here's the key environments you might need. And we use it as a place to make sure that it's clear who the people responsible for this project are. So we put a description on the channel that says the lead developer on this project is this person. We assign a lead developer to every project, and their role is not to be the person that does all the work, but to steer the direction of the project and make sure that quality is upheld and that they kind of own the technical requirements in some way. So this is the person you go talk to when these links aren't up to date or the documentation's missing some information. We've decided recently as a company where our time zone spread is at any time about 12 hours, being in Australia and the UK, that notifications at any time are fine. And it's up to the individual to determine when they want to be notified about things. So in line with this, like we're truly flexible working and people can work when they want, you set your notification schedule. And Teams and Slack and Google have great setups for that will show people when you're not expected to be contacted. So it shows this outside of working hours. And you can flex this by day and even by people. So I allow some certain VIPs to message me at any time, but outside of that, I turn my notifications off. So another really important part of leading a team, of course, is mentorship. And mentorship becomes very tricky when you're leading a remote team because unlike in offices of old where you could turn to someone and ask for help, it takes a lot more work actually to say, hey, I need help or I'm struggling. You can't see someone struggling. So we've taken a different approach to mentorship. And really it starts from the day that someone joins the company. Our onboarding process looks like this. We have 3 days of onboarding for our company. I say 3 days, they're 3 half days. We don't want to burden people on their first few days. So the first day is a welcome. We have a call with the whole team. We get everyone together. We introduce them. We get them set up with their laptop and all the systems and where to find things. Day 2 is an onboarding onto their projects. So if it's a developer joining us, that is some technical information about the project, get things running, explain the architectural decisions, explain the roadmap, explain where we're going. And then we call it a day at like midday. And then our final day is a team social. No work. As many people as we possibly can, despite being a remote team, we'll get them together in person to meet that person, have lunch, enjoy themselves. A recent hire, I wasn't able to join, and I asked one of the leads to make sure they picked up the tab and send me the bill. And I complained afterwards because the bill was not big enough. Like, you've not enjoyed yourselves enough. You're supposed to be going out and getting to know these people. You're going to be working with them every day, so it's important you build that relationship. We use that as our onboarding process. One-to-ones are really important, of course. That's with your manager and your direct reports. In my case, I felt like I was talking to my team all the time because we're a remote team and we collaborate. But actually, we were talking about our projects, not about personal development, about just how life is in general. It's a great opportunity to spot those areas where people are maybe falling behind, where maybe someone needs some training or just needs a bit more extra support. So we do monthly one-to-ones virtually, and where possible, I'll try and go and meet people in person. If I happen to be in the UK, for example, we'll go have lunch and we'll take ourselves out of our usual surroundings. I'm going to tell you a little story here. So we onboarded a developer based remotely, and they had awful internet problems from the day they joined. They were a more junior developer when they joined us. And this made things incredibly problematic. Getting projects running on their machine, connecting to remote databases, anything really was incredibly problematic. They went to the point of having their front garden dug up and having ultra-fast fiber internet fitted, and they still had internet issues. You couldn't jump on a call, you couldn't do anything. Like, it was incredibly frustrating. And I hate to think how much impact that had on this person's career in those early formative days where you really need to get stuck into projects and get up and running. It turned out, after replacing the Dell XPS laptop they were using, and the issue still persisting, that Dell ships some firmware on their machines that does network prioritization. And if you're on a call and connected to a database, it throttles everything down to half a meg, and you can't do anything. So anyone with a Dell XPS, go home and make sure you've disabled that silly bit of firmware. But yeah, we turned it off, and overnight, internet was great, didn't have any issues anymore. But we set ourselves back about 2 years, and it really, as I say, might have harmed this person's career. We use pair programming as a technique a lot. I'd love to say we do this on everything, and I know there's some companies who do mob or squad programming on every task, but we don't. But where it's important, where there's big architectural decisions to be made, or just where it's a good teaching experience, we'll do pair programming where possible. That involves sitting on a call, generally Slack or Google Meet, and you walk through the problem and you kind of take it in turns for driving. It's very common that in pair programming scenarios, one person will do all the work, and that's also not healthy. So yeah, we try and make sure people are doing, say, 10 to 15 minutes and then swapping and taking over. Code reviews are critical and a part of basically every software team, hopefully. We use GitHub, and GitHub's tooling for code reviews is fantastic, in my opinion. It allows you to give suggestions in line, comment on bits of code in line as well, and it's quite collaborative. But we've got a few ground rules internally, which are the pull request should be small, only a couple of commits, only a few files changed. If it's anything bigger than that, really, you should jump on a call, talk through the change, and that's fine as a peer review rather than it going through a formal GitHub code review process. We aim for no more than about 3 to 5 comments on any pull request. Anything beyond that can start to feel like a bit of an attack, especially on more junior people. You've got to be quite careful with the language you use, so we keep it quite simple, quite matter of fact. We don't do this. Here's a link to some documentation as to why, and if not, we jump on a call and we discuss instead. It's much healthier, it's much easier to do that way. As I say, suggestions, references, documentation, all very helpful. One of the big things that we've had to learn in recent times is that agreeing an approach to a task up front, especially if there's a strong opinion on the way something should be done, is quite critical. We kind of had this idea that, oh, this is a very senior developer, give them the problem, they'll just go away and solve it. And it would come back and people in the team, perhaps the lead developer on a project would be going, why has it been done like that? I don't necessarily agree, we shouldn't have done it that way. And it just creates conflict. So we have a quick architectural discussion before any big piece of work early on where we establish all of those things and make sure that it's documented clearly, the approach, either with a diagram or a kind of written up line by line. We're going to change this class in our .NET code to do this thing. We find this helpful. What I will say is remote work really is not for everyone. So all the techniques I've just discussed there, for some people, if they are more focused when they are sat in an office next to someone else and they can turn to them for help, that's great. But perhaps the harsh truth is they shouldn't be working in a team that's remote first. And it's really important that you work that out early on because you end up with these challenges of people that just don't gel with that culture. They struggle, the quality of the work that they deliver just isn't good. So we sort of try and weed that out in our interview process quite a lot. We give people tasks. We ask them to explain code verbally over a call or explain a problem verbally over a call, which is a key skill if you're working remotely. You can't just show someone your computer. You can't hand them the computer and say, please help me fix this thing. And perhaps for more junior people, remote work doesn't work. Maybe they are better off in an office, in an environment that's supportive where they can lean on people. And that's okay, that's fine. But you got to get people with the right attitude. An example of this, we interviewed a junior developer in the last couple of years, and I was explaining about the tech stack we use, and he said, oh yeah, I've got a book that I've been reading on that, and presented a book, and we were able to then talk a little bit about his interest in that specific thing. versus other people who we interviewed in that same round that would kind of talk vaguely in terms of technology they were interested in, but couldn't really get too excited or passionate about something. I'm sure there's a level of nerves and stuff there, but really you need someone who can clearly communicate, be clearly excited and passionate about what they're doing, on a call, not needing to be next to someone from day one. So I'm going to talk about health and well-being quickly to wrap up, and I have to give a little disclaimer, of course, I'm not a doctor. I'm going to be talking about some things here that are perhaps sensitive topics, and these are my views and my opinions only as someone who's been working with people like this, but yeah. So I think the pandemic was pretty hard on everybody. The number of people in my team who came out of the pandemic identifying as having ADHD, stress, depression, some other kind of thing like that was huge. We went from, before COVID, having one person in the team identifying with ADHD to 2/3 of my company after having ADHD. And a study in 2022, the Burnout Index, concluded that 62% in tech are actually burned out, and this was something like 55% of men, and about 69 to 70% of women were feeling burned out in tech. And all of them were within 6 months of wanting to quit their jobs. That's a pretty scary number, right? And I think it just shows how it's important to really look after your team and make sure that they're feeling rewarded, they're feeling not stressed, you're trying to reduce that burden as much as possible. Software engineers are hard to hire, especially good ones, and you want to keep hold of them. So just for a bit of balance, here's a survey that shows that remote work's a terrible thing, because I've been up here preaching how great remote work is. Effectively, this study says that people who work remotely are more stressed, they get more angry, they are generally more sad, more lonely, less likely to be engaged, less likely to say they're thriving. When you compare to a company that has like on-site remote capable or hybrid, apparently that's the best mix. And I think the takeaway from here really is people, despite software engineers not really, well, software engineers attracting a certain type of a person, let's say, people do like people, and it's important to have that contact with people. You don't want to be a remote company where you're locked away and you just look at a screen all day and you leave. There's companies out there that's like that, and if that's what you want, that's absolutely fine, of course. But I think if you can build a culture around good work, but valuing in-person, personal interaction is really important. So I mentioned ADHD, and I Googled a list of ADHD symptoms. Things like impulsiveness, disorganization, lack of prioritization, poor time management, trouble multitasking, restlessness, frustration, mood swings, a hot temper, and being defensive. Now, I don't think there's anybody in this room that would be able to say hand on heart that they don't identify with at least one or two of these attributes. This is to say that ADHD is a spectrum, and it affects people in different ways. And even people who are diagnosed with ADHD will tell you that their ways of coping are completely different to other people's. This was a big wake-up call for me, as I say, going from one person to several people in my company identifying as having ADHD, and all with completely different ways of coping with it, was quite a challenge. So a couple of strategies that do work for us for leading people who have ADHD. People need rewarding work and tasks, and they need to be able to see like they're making progress and success. So giving people small, isolated chunks of work is a really good way of doing that. Making sure that people have an individual plan and that they are tracking themselves against their plan to make sure that they feel like they're on track. Something, again, to keep motivation. Accountability is a big one. If you give people a vague deadline and say, within the next 2 weeks, we need this feature done, that's not good enough. We've got a meeting on Wednesday. I need to know a progress update by then. By Friday, I hope to see here's where we're getting, and we can review at that point. Having a clear, accountable deadlines is important. And finally, creating buffer. Me, as a manager, I can say, hey, I know this person will say, this is fine, I can do this in 2 days, but if we can give them 4, it doesn't hurt anybody. And it just means if it does take slightly longer, or we do need a little bit more time to make sure that this person can get this right, then, it doesn't harm anybody. So this is a good thing to do. I mentioned earlier we used to use a product called Trello, and we've switched to a product called ClickUp. It's fundamentally very similar, quite a visual, card-based system. It allows a few other things like deadlines and dependencies. But the crucial thing that this has really changed for us is having personal to-do lists. So for people who need that clear, accountable, I've got this list of tasks to do by this time, having deadlines and a clear list of these are the things you need to do today, these are the things you need to do this week, and these are the things that you need to do next or that are overdue is really helpful. And we found this is a game changer for our productivity. A lot of other tools out there, but this one is, particularly good. Now, to finish, what makes a good manager? Because I've spoken a lot about attributes that you should be trying to encourage your team to follow and things that you want to be encouraging. But how do you yourself be a good manager? It's a hard question to answer, and I think it's easier to say what makes a bad manager. Because when I was in the airport on the way here, I witnessed what I would describe as a bad manager. It was somebody on the phone with, I'm guessing, a software team, complaining, berating them, saying, this is embarrassing, I needed this last Friday, I've got a meeting this Friday, it's embarrassing, I need it fixed, and did I mention it's embarrassing, and I need a fix now, but I also need an explanation as to why it's so bad, and please tell me you're going to have it fixed by Friday, but also it's embarrassing, and I want answers. That is not conducive with delivering good quality work, or even delivering progress. Instead, I think the manager role should be doing these few things: setting a clear focus and a direction, being the team's biggest champion. Yeah, shit goes wrong, that's fine, but you need to encourage people to keep going, and we're going to work through this together. The manager's job is eliminating resistance and aiding productivity in your team, making sure that your team can remain as effective as possible. And finally, probably most importantly, ensuring their well-being. Berating them on a Teams call is not the way to do that. A lot of these behaviors are very easy for you as a manager to project onto other people, but more often than not, people will forget about themselves as well. I'm guilty of this. We say no overtime, work strict hours, you don't need to check your phone out of hours. I do all of those things. I'm a bad example as a manager. Often managers don't have a support network. They may have a couple of other peers, but they're equally busy and they can't catch up. So my encouragement here is find someone similar to you, find someone in a similar position, have regular check-ins with them, have a coffee, take some time out. It's okay to not be busy 100% of the time. And really try and work on yourself as well. To summarize my key takeaways, remote work is really hard. It's potentially harder than working in an office, and it's really not suited to everyone. You've got to weed out the people who are well suited. Consistent touch points are paramount for ensuring you're aligned on your priorities and making sure that your team's moving forward. Your culture is learned. Ultimately, I was in a fortunate position where from the very start, I was able to define a culture and instill that across my team. And we keep doing that today. It starts with the leaders. And I believe, even if you don't have the opportunity to start a company from scratch, if you're leading a team, you can define the way your team works and the exact ways that you want your team to behave. And finally, understanding your team's unique attributes, things like ADHD, and learning how to manage those properly, adapting your process accordingly, means that you can have a really effective team. This can be your superpower. You have one person I need this task done as quickly as possible, as well as possible. This is the person to give that task to. Really get to know your team, understand their unique superpowers, and use those to your advantage. I'm out of time. I'm over time, but thank you. I'm on GitHub, Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, at all of those handles. I'm around for the rest of the conference. I've got another talk later about .NET and MCP at 3 p.m. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much.